Funding for this program is brought to you in part by Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services.
Thanks for joining us. This is Real Life. I'm Rose Martin here with our favorite life coach, Susan Harf, for tips and strategies for how we can negotiate those tricky things that get in our way with real life. Like you, I can't wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Rose.
What are you thinking about?
Well, I'm so happy to see you today, and also you. What I'm thinking about today is what happens when you are starting to have an argument. And you didn't necessarily choose to go there. It's not what you thought about when you began the discussion. But here you are, you're in the middle of an argument, and how do you diffuse it? What happens now? So just so that I could come talk to you about an argument, I've had one or two myself.
I can say that I've also had just a few arguments
just so
in my
we
life.
could,
yeah.
Just so we could talk about it together today, right? And the other thing that I have done is, as you know, I've spent several decades working with couples, individuals, and families as a life coach and as a therapist. So I have also witnessed people arguing and coached them through arguments. So I guess the first thing I want to say about arguing is that it's not a terrible thing. Some people think it is. Some people believe that if they have an argument, it means the marriage is over, or the relationship with their boss is not a good one, or they're going to have problems forever with their teenager. No, that's not the case. Arguing is part of life. It's part of what we do when we're passionate about what we're saying. So what we're here to think about today in relative to arguing is how can we make it productive? And I think the very first thing that comes to my mind when I think about arguing is intent. When you start to argue with somebody, and usually it's somebody that you care about, you kind of get this feeling like, I'm opposite you, I'm on the other side of you, I'm here and you're there. I need to win. It's about winning at that point. And instead, if we had a different intent, it would set the whole stage for a different scenario. So for instance, when I was raising teenagers, and thank God they're older, and we can react to each other as adults, but when they were teenagers, sometimes we would argue. And when I was able to think to myself and then to say out loud to them, you know what? We both have a similar situation right now. In fact, we're allies. You know why? Because I got a problem and so do you. And my son sometimes would say, well, you happen to be the problem. And I would say, well, right now I kind of think you are, but let's focus on the fact that we both together have an issue. That makes us allies, not enemies. So intent is very important when you start to feel that anger moving up the ladder to, going through your whole body. And sometimes people say to me, they can actually feel that heat. They feel themselves getting hot and being upset. If we can settle that down by saying, this is really my ally. And usually the person that you're arguing with is your ally in your life. So for instance, it's your partner, it's your spouse, it's your child, it's your boss, it's the person that you supervise, it's your coworker. It's somebody that you are close to in your environment that you see all the time. We don't bother arguing with people that we don't care about. How about that?
Well, I agree with you there that we don't argue with people we don't care about. But I have a few questions about the intent, because when you're ready to argue, you're emotional and you really want to get your point across. And oftentimes I know we don't listen, and we should listen a little bit more, because you're hearing what someone's saying instead of planning out my next move or my next line that's going to be so important. But how do you set intent when you're in the middle of so much high emotion?
Very good question. And the answer is you think internally. And there is time to do that. And I'm going to teach also, we're going to talk today also about some clear-cut tips that you can do while you're arguing. But I'm staying with the intent for a moment because your question is very well-grounded. The fact is that if you find yourself getting so passionate about the discussion way too early, then that's a sign to you that you are bringing more into this conversation than it deserves. So have you ever found yourself saying, and you did it before, and you've done it again, and this is what happened last time you did that? Or have you found yourself, let's say that's with a spouse, with a coworker, have you found yourself thinking, they'll never get it, this is the way they operate? Once you start bringing the past into the present, you know what you're doing? You are setting the stage for the past outcome that you didn't like.
Oh, okay, wait a minute. If I'm thinking about something else and I'm bringing that up again, do you say I'm not giving this new argument a fair chance? I'm not giving it a fair shake to see that we can resolve this, that there's too much baggage? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that and more. I'm saying you are creating the past. When you bring the past into the now, you're not giving yourself and the other person an opportunity to create a different present and future. You are instead making certain that you're going to get the same result as you did in the past. That's not what we want. You want to know something? I have actually seen people do that in second marriages. They start arguing with not the person who's even in front of them. They're arguing with the former partner. And so they're creating another scenario similar to the first, where they're not giving the second spouse the opportunity to behave differently than the first one, because their reactions are akin to what happened before.
Do you think that we take different levels of emotion between family members, spouses, and coworkers and other relatives, or is there a standard emotional response when you're arguing with someone, no matter what they are, who they are in your life?
Also a great question. I do think that what the other person is saying, doing, speaking, acting has a lot to do with your response. That's why we can tolerate some people more than others. Some people are not arguers to begin with. They're going to listen to you and then say, okay. And then others bring out the worst in you.
So another question. So is it my triggers for an argument that might send me in a more of an emotional state, or is it me recognizing the person that I'm arguing with, their triggers? Like,
yes and yes. It's mostly your triggers.
Okay.
Because what we need to focus on is our role. Too often when we're arguing with somebody, our intent is to make them lose. Win, lose. I win, you lose. I'm right, you're wrong. And the other thing that I say to people about this subject is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? So sometimes we think it becomes more important to win, when in fact, when you look back to what happened, you say to yourself sometimes, that really wasn't the factor that I was going to die on. You know, that really wasn't the conversation that I needed to have. What would have been so wrong if I said, okay, we'll do it your way? So we've talked about intent. We've talked about, let's try, if at all possible, to view ourselves as allies. We both have a problem. It might be each other, but we are together in this. And if we can come out together, we both will be happier. There isn't a reason, most often, why one person has to win and one person has to lose. So if we can get off that intent to win and instead make the intent to both feel like we got something out of this, then, and at the same time not bring the past into it, then that sort of takes the heat off. It takes the whole initiative has changed. The intent is different now. I want us both to leave here feeling good instead of, I'm the winner, you're the loser.
Okay, so if you're in the middle of it, what are the specific steps we need to follow?
So one of the things that we need to do is to listen. And people say, yeah, I heard you, I have ears, but that's not listening. And one of the things that we can do to show somebody that we're listening is to repeat what you thought you heard them say. And when you do that, what's amazing is sometimes you find out you were wrong. What you thought you heard is not what they said. And that's because there's something else we do when we're arguing, and guess what? I've done it. I'm thinking about what I want to say.
Sure.
You're talking to me, but I'm kind of thinking, I'm listening to you a little bit, but I'm thinking, what's my next move? What do I want to say in response to that? And when you do that, it makes you a bad listener. So you can't really hear what somebody's saying to you if you are thinking about what you're going to say next. So let's say I am listening to you. So say something to me that you might say during a sort of a confrontation.
Well, we've been through this before, and you're doing it again and again and again. And I don't think you hear me about what things are important to me, or you wouldn't be doing this again.
So what you're telling me is that you really don't think I'm listening to you right now, and you think I'm just going to react the same way that I always have. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay, how do you feel? What do you think when you hear me say that?
I do feel that you did hear me, and you did understand the point I was going to try to make without coming right back at me with your position. So it was less of a battleground, you do one, I do one, you do one, I do one. So it was less that way by you responding in a respectful way to see if I was understood.
And you know what that did for me when I said that to you? It gave me time. Number one, I'm responding to you, I'm giving you the respect that you deserve by letting you know that I heard you and that I'm trying to hear you, I'm trying to listen, I'm trying to get it. It also gives me time to step back and stop thinking about my position for a second and instead think about you. So the first thing I'm suggesting is active listening, letting the person know that you heard them. The second thing I'm suggesting is wait 10 seconds before you say what you want to say next. And during those 10 seconds, you can do a couple of things. You cannot say anything. Silence is good in an argument. It gives both of you time to calm down. It gives both time to think. And then the other thing that it does is allows you the presence of mind that you need to hear what the person says in response. So let's say you said to me, nope, that's not what I meant. Then we go back, okay, tell me what it is you meant. And so active listening not only gives you the opportunity to know that I heard you, if I heard you correctly, but it also gives me the opportunity to check it out, because sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I hear what you're saying based on my parameters and my frame of mind. We are all coming from a different school. We all went to a school to learn how to be a human being. And you know what that school was? It was your family of origin. You watched your parents argue or not argue. You watched your parents teach you how to get along in the world, not by what they said, but by what they did, or sometimes by what they told you to do also. But you watched them and you were a student. And the person that you're with now, that you're having an argument with, they didn't go to the same school that you did. And so we are all coming from such a different vantage point. You know, one of the stories I like to tell is about one of the first arguments I had with my husband, when he said to me very calmly, I asked him if he wanted to go to dinner before a play. And he said, I don't think it's necessary. And as soon as I heard him say those words, my tentacles went up and I said, what? And he said, I don't think it's necessary. We could just grab something at home or whatever, no big deal. I said, well, that wasn't very nice. It's not necessary. That's not a nice thing to say. He said, I didn't know that. Where'd you get that one from? Well, I know exactly where I got it from. When I was growing up, one of the ways my father shared with me that it wasn't time to move on to the next stage. So for instance, when I wanted to wear makeup, he said it wasn't necessary. When I wanted to go in a car with a boy, it wasn't necessary. When I wanted to have a date and I wanted to go out with a boy who was older than me, that wasn't necessary. Those were my trigger words. My husband didn't know that. So when he said, not necessary, I freaked. So I had to tell him, these are my words. He wouldn't know that. And not only these are my words, these are my trigger words. I don't want you to say those words. Those words make me feel like you're in charge and I'm not. Well, my father was in charge and I wasn't. But that's not the same way in a marriage. So in other words, we need to have intent that says we're allies. We need to try and come from the position that we want us both to feel good in the end. And we want to be able to identify for each other where we're coming from. And when we bring the past into it, we are only recreating the past, which really is never going to be a good thing. Because if it was, then it wouldn't still be an argument. It wouldn't still be a point of contention.
Do you think it's good to ask someone, what do you want right now? You know, you've listened, you've repeated it, and now maybe someone just wants to know that you want to make action and you want to give them something by asking them, you know, what do you really want from me?
Exactly. That is such a great thing to ask, especially when sometimes you're in an argument with somebody that you think you know well, but you really don't know where they're coming from. And this happens a lot. I see this a lot when I'm working with teams in organizations. You're trying to give your boss what it is they want, but you really don't know for sure because you don't know necessarily the intent, you don't know what needs to be the outcome, you don't know how your boss wants to arrive at the outcome, and you may have a completely different way of arriving at the outcome. So I'll give you an example about that. There are people who are driven and motivated by getting it done and getting it done quickly. And those are not people who need everything spelled out. They don't want everything spelled out. They think that takes too much time. They want the basics. They want to know what the outcome should be, and that's it. They really don't want any more information. Then there are people who want to cross every T and want to dot every I. And they want a lot of information from you about what it is you want. And even when you tell them what you want, they want to take their time to give it to you. The reason they want to take their time is because they want it to be right. So you have somebody who's going at 75 miles an hour there, and you've got somebody going at 45 miles an hour. And those two people have to interact. And let's say the 75 miles per hour person is your boss. And let's say you're the 45 miles an hour person. So you are soliciting information from your boss, who really doesn't want to give you a whole lot of information. They just want it done right now. And they finally give you the information, but you kind of can tell they're perturbed. They don't want to have this lengthy conversation. They're in a hurry. But you ask that of them because you really want to give them what they want. And then when you try and do that, you get response from your boss saying, where is it? I told you I needed this, but you didn't tell me when you needed it by, because this isn't a boss who gives a lot of detail. So you didn't tell me when you needed it by, and I'm trying to do the best I can, and I want it to be perfect when I hand it to you. So you see how those two people with different motivations could clash. So your question, what is it that you want right now? And moreover, how do you want it? And how much time do I have to give it to you? Those are important things to find out, because we don't all want the same thing, and we don't want it in the same amount of time, and we're not motivated the same way. So for instance, if the person who is motivated by speed is somebody who has to put up with, they think they're putting up with someone who's taking forever, let's say a week to give it to them, they don't care if you give it to them with typos. They don't care if there's a paragraph missing. They just want something to look at. But in order to know that, you need to ask the questions, like you're saying, what really do you want from me? And how do you want it? And forgive me if I'm asking too much right now, but I need to know that in order to give you what you want. And that brings us to another piece of this. It brings us to the piece of respect. Intent and respect really come into play when there is a potential argument. Because if I respect you, I'm going to tell you the parameters of what it is I need. And then I am going to be satisfied with the way that you give it to me. Because I need to be open to the idea that we aren't all the same. I've had people tell me in organizations that they believe that the subordinate, the person that was working for them, is lazy. And when I when I spent more time speaking with them about that relationship, what I realized was that direct report was not lazy at all. They were motivated by quality. And my job was to help that boss understand that that person wasn't lazy at all, and they weren't working slowly. They were working slower than they work.
And I'm thinking we have those same dynamics in a family.
Absolutely.
Right? So those same dynamics in work, those same dynamics in a family. So if we go into an argument or if we're in an argument assuming intent, are you saying that by recognizing those differences in personalities or styles, that we could maybe diffuse an argument before it even gets started? So you don't have to de-escalate? Okay.
Absolutely. And at some point we can talk more about the different personality styles. Sometimes though, we're not all experts in personality theory. And so if you're not an expert, I don't expect you to be an expert, but then what I expect of you is to ask those questions. Tell me what it is you want from me. Tell me what I can do to make you happier. Too often we think that the person's trying to do us in. And instead what I want us to think is, we're allies. You're not trying to do me in. And especially when this relates to your spouse, what I want you to be thinking is, this is the person that I married. This is the person that I love. This is the person that I want to get along with. In the heat of the moment, it's too easy to think, I hate him right now. I can't believe he's treating me this way. I don't want to be treated this way. Too often we're thinking that because, you know how when we were growing up, our parents said to us, many of our parents said, the golden rule is treat other people how you want to be treated. Well, I'm suggesting to you that there's a platinum rule. The platinum rule is treat other people how they want to be treated. It's different.
That's good. And maybe that is what intent is all about. So if we're going to recap for how to diffuse an argument, name the most important steps. Would you start with that platinum rule or would you end with it? I'm wondering. I don't know. What are you thinking?
I would start with the platinum rule. I'd start with what is my intent. Focus on you. Don't focus on them and what they're doing wrong. What is my intent here? What can I do to bring about the best possible outcome? And then the actual tips. Use active listening. Say to the person, this is what I thought I heard you say. And then ask, was this it? Am I right? Is that what you said? And then be sure to take responsibility for your role. Don't bring the past into the present. And wait 10 seconds when you speak or when you ask, am I getting it right? So all of those things can sort of help diffuse the argument.
Those are some great tips for how to not only diffuse it when I'm in the middle of it, but if I think about that and you had started out by saying you feel hot and you're getting excited or you're getting really emotional, maybe those steps you can also apply before the angry words start or the accusations start or the visits to the past start.
Exactly.
So then you can save yourself heartache a little bit later on if the argument escalates.
And you know what that reminds me of, Rose? It reminds me of the fact that the choice to present to this person who's arguing with you something different than they're giving you is always a choice. In other words, we started off by saying certain people bring things out in us, but the choice to be yourself, to get along with this person who you don't think is getting along with you right now, that's always your choice. You don't always have to choose the tone that they are providing you. You can choose your own tone. You can choose to say, I'm getting along right now. I'm going to make sure that I get along with you right now.
I'm going to breathe and I'm going to be calm.
And
I'm
wait
not
10
going to
seconds.
escalate or I'm not going to have a higher voice pitch for any of those things. So
it's not a contest.
Yeah. So, I think it's very interesting that we do have a choice in an argument because sometimes I'm not sure you feel that way.
Absolutely.
That you can have it. It's almost like you have to have the whole argument and have it finished out, and you're right, there's a winner and a loser. But what I'm hearing you say is that we don't have to have a winner and a loser. If we both go into this with a great intent and we take time to breathe and we are active listening and we follow the platinum rule to make sure that we treat each other with kindness, love, and respect. How'd I do?
Rose, you're such a good listener. You're such a great listener, Rose. That is exactly what I said. Yeah.
Well, I think what I take from this is that we do have choices, and we do have an opportunity to make sure that the people we love, the people in our families, people that we meet in the grocery store line that may irritate us, or people that we work with, that we can have harmonious, great relationships even though we're all different.
And we always, if there are any absolutes, this is one of them. We always have more in common with that person, whether it's the person in the grocery line, the person you're married to, your child, your coworker, whoever it is. We always have more in common with them than we have different.
So I like that. And I think that, again, great advice, because we love our life coach, Susan Harf. And I think if I take anything away, I'm going to remember that platinum rule, to treat others as not I want to be treated, but how they want to be treated.
They want to be treated.
Yeah, so thanks so much for joining us for Real Life. We're really happy that you're here. Susan's going to be available throughout the entire season to give us tips and advice on how we can go ahead and navigate those tricky parts of life that sometimes trip us up. So active listening, following the golden rule, all of that's going to make us successful. Thanks for joining us, and we'll both see you next time.